Chromakopia is out, and it has received some very interesting reception. On one hand, critics seem to have given this album scores around the 80% margin, but at the same time, it seems to me like a lot of the general listeners see this album as more of a 6. Why do so many people seem to be disappointed by Chromakopia, despite the fact that by all means, it is a good album? From what I see, it comes down to something very important missing, and that is commitment. If we're going chronologically, Chromakopia's first impression came when it introduced itself through the cryptic and stylistic Saint Chroma. Looking back, this teaser, as well as the promotion for Chromakopia's tour, were both full of personality and mystery, which is important to note for two reasons. The first one being that people naturally line up their expectations for an album with its rollout. After all, that is what an album rollout is for. The singles, visuals, and energy that an album introduces itself with are supposed to give people a good idea of what it's going to be about. This can be a super powerful tool for building up hype and enhancing an album's legacy. A 10 out of 10 album is awesome, but getting to enjoy anticipation towards it is even better. I think some of the most memorable albums are the ones that do get teased and ultimately live up to their hype. This Chromakopia teaser gives off the impression that it is going to be an album that is serious and sophisticated, but also chaotic, experimental, energetic, and revolutionary in its sound. The long line of people marching also gave off the impression that this album was going to be packed full of features. The problem is that Chromakopia didn't ultimately match the impression it gave in its vibes or features. At least half of them. This album did end up being serious and sophisticated, but it was not nearly as chaotic, experimental, energetic, or revolutionary in its sound as this teaser kind of made it seem. The second important thing to note is that from what I've seen, people tend to correlate an album rollout being cryptic with it being a masterpiece. I believe that the best albums do tend to be the ones that are teased in mystery. This is because oftentimes when an artist feels very proud of their work, they tend to have a more mysterious rollout to get people as hyped for it as possible, and to let them know that this is not a normal album. I think the only way to describe Chromakopia's rollout is cryptic. The black and white filter, steady marching, and designs are shrouded in mystery. They make you assume Chromakopia is going to be something unimaginable, something that of which Tyler has never made before. The problem is that Chromakopia kind of was a normal album. It reminds me of what happened with an album called Clancy, which funnily enough was also created by a man named Tyler. The band behind it, 21 Pilots, hyped up the album with a rollout that promised a grand, lore-filled conclusion to a story they had been telling through their albums for years. But when the album released, it didn't really do that. Instead, it was mostly just kind of a normal rock album. And this left a lot of people feeling thrown off, because the rollout led them to believe that they were going to get something else. And I think to a certain extent, the same thing happened with Chromakopia. Don't get me wrong, Tyler certainly delivered a great album, but it might not have exactly been what a lot of people were expecting. I think a lot of people expected that it was going to be this type of album, when in reality it ended up being this one. And there's nothing wrong with that, but expectations do heavily affect how people perceive an album. Am I saying that Chromakopia is getting held back from perfect scores because it didn't match preconceptions based on its rollout, or even that we as listeners potentially misinterpreted Tyler's intended impression with the rollout? Well, a little bit. One of the main ingredients of disappointment is expectations, and Chromakopia's rollout gave a lot of people a lot of expectations, and I think this might have slightly contributed to its general reception, but there's far more to it than that. Let's talk about the album itself, because I think even without this rollout, the sentiment that this is an above average to mid album would still mostly be the same. Here's my thoughts on Chromakopia. First of all, it is Tyler's most honest album to date, and it really shines because of that. It has profound lyrics, untouched themes, and a very strong and cohesive sound and tone. This album's production is airtight, and inside of it, there is nothing but pure substance. The lyrics in it address serious topics with great execution, most prominently pregnancy, fatherhood, and identity. The way Tyler talks about his fears and shame in Chromakopia is as compelling as it is vulnerable. In this album, Tyler chose to let us know exactly what he was thinking, and it benefited from it tremendously. On the instrumental front, the album is cohesive. Your first listen will leave you feeling satisfied, kind of like you just ate a filling meal. The songs all feel like they fit together as a satisfying project. The strongest part, in my opinion, being Take Off Your Mask into Tomorrow, as well as Like Him. These parts of the album are profound and amazing, and when I was listening to them, they really took me off my feet. While other Tyler albums can feel energetic and emotional, these pockets of the album felt beautifully sober, like they were really tapping into emotions and style that Tyler had never ventured into before. The problem is, it was only those pockets of the album that fully achieved that feeling. You see, this album is no doubt clean and quality, and listening to it does feel like sitting down to enjoy a 5-star meal. But there's 3 things missing, in my opinion: innovation, energy, and hook. Sure, there are memorable moments on these songs, and they are definitely not bland, but they are also missing what makes other Tyler albums so good. One person who had a lot to say about Chromakopia being mid was a streamer named Max. Throughout his listening of Chromakopia, Max seemed almost a bit conflicted. He was certain that the album was good, but maintained that it was not one he could see himself returning to. When talking about the song Sticky, he even questioned how people were supposed to dance to it, and at one point, he wanted to know why Chromakopia wasn't considered noise.
Okay, so look, just hear me out. I know I'm about to say. Net spend is just noise, but this isn't. You feel me though? Like, how do you determine what's just noise and what's not? Like, I don't think this sounds bad. I think it sounds, but like, you feel me? Real shit though. Do y'all not, bro? I'm keeping it stat. Net spend is just noise, but this isn't just noise. Like, this is just noise. It's good noise. It sounds good, but you feel me?
Now, there's an important distinction to make here. Despite his criticism, Max did not say that Chromakopia was a bad album, but he also didn't seem to think it was very enjoyable. And I believe this reflects how a lot of the general audience and Tyler fans feel. The point about danceability is actually something that has been said about past Tyler albums, only specifically by one jealous DJ Khaled. This story has been told many times, but basically DJ Khaled was jealous of Tyler's success, and he claimed that Tyler's music was weird. Tyler actually ended up agreeing that his songs were not conventional ones that would be playing in barbershops, almost to admit that his songs are not ones you can casually listen to, or to admit that his songs cannot thrive in the mainstream. I, however, disagree, because even though an album like Igor is unique, it's definitely an album that you can still casually listen to many repeated times. I don't think most people would be inclined to do that with Chromakopia though, at least if you're a casual listener and not already a huge Tyler the Creator fan. This is because Chromakopia is missing those traits that I just mentioned earlier: innovation, energy, and hook. Behind the flawless production and heartfelt lyrics, it's missing what other albums like Igor, Flower Boy, and Call Me If You Get Lost had. This album is no doubt clean and quality, and the lyrics are a major improvement. But after you've admired that presentation and the messages inside the songs, you might look around and realize there's nothing else to really keep you around, because Chromakopia plays it too safe. The songs on this album don't push too many boundaries, even though at first they seem like they should, and at the same time, they aren't really songs you can listen to casually either. The biggest perpetrator of this is Noid, which has been a surprisingly divisive song. On the surface, it sounds like a bold tune that should be top tier, but by the time you finish listening to it, you're left wanting more. The lyrics of this song and its message are awesome, and the instrumentation sounds like it's going to do some amazing stuff, but the song kind of just leaves it there. I think a lot of people listen to this song waiting for something to really take off in its structure, only for Noid to just kind of keep it self-contained. The music feels tense, like it's building up, but the song doesn't have a payoff. Some people say this was done to illustrate, paranoia. The song gets suspenseful, but nothing ever happens, kind of like being paranoid. But at the same time, I can't help but see through that and really just see what should have been a more complex, innovative song full of higher energy. It has all the markings of a hit, but it just coasts off without using its full potential. And this leaves the listener feeling like something is missing. Because the song isn't something they can listen to casually, but it also isn't one they can feel very enriched by. If you're going to make a song that you cannot casually really listen to on aux, then you probably want to make that song as interesting as possible to reward and stimulate the listener. That might seem entitled, but it is how I think a lot of people feel about this song and Chromakopia as a whole. Noid feels incomplete, and despite its compelling lyrics, it almost seems hollow, like there should have been more going on inside of it. Now, I'll be clear, I don't think that Chromakopia or Noid are hollow or soulless. They have so much humanity inside of them. But the problem is they're kind of stuck in a limbo, a purgatory between being a courageously self-dependent album and one that doesn't take enough chances. And what it really should have done was pick a side. One symptom of this is how Chromakopia can't seem to break free from the conventional Tyler sound. The same synths and backing vocals we've been hearing for years are very much present in this album. But the problem is, I think they've overstayed their welcome. There are many parts of this album where it sounds exactly like Tyler made it, and that was definitely intentional considering how he proudly mentioned that one of the songs was Tyler coded. It's really cool that Tyler has such a signature production style and that he can channel it into his work. But on Chromakopia, the style leans into itself too much, to the point where the sound is too on brand. There are parts of Chromakopia where it just sounds like you could have heard this song on any other album. It sounds harsh to say, but the signature production almost comes off as generic. Just because I've heard these same synths and backing vocals in the same style and arrangement so many times before. You can kind of chop up a lot of the Chromakopia songs as having parts where they sound like they're going to do something new, but there's also an equal amount of space where there's just that all too familiar Tyler production that I think should have gone through more change before it was put into another album. In other words, too much of a good thing is bad. These same sounds that we've been hearing since Flower Boy hold the album together, but they're not really helping it distinguish itself. At the same time, Chromakopia does try some new experiments, but not nearly enough to make it feel like an innovative album. And this results in an album that is comforting, it's predictable, but it's also not casual. So you have this album that's not rewarding the diehard listener, and also not rewarding the casual listener. What Chromakopia should have done musically was venture into new territory without looking back. Imagine a Chromakopia that fully embraced those themes of bold honesty and insecurity. One that ventured deep into new sound just as it ventured into new topics. An album that, rather than kind of making you feel gray, fully committed to that energy in both sound and structure. If Chromakopia had more of its own identity, not only would it sound more unique, but it would also be able to capture the listener. Imagine if instead of having an album that tries some new stuff while still maintaining the status quo, this was an album that dove headfirst into unfamiliar music that could match the unfamiliarity of its lyrics. Listeners wouldn't question what the album was supposed to be because they would know. Chromakopia should have been a devastatingly honest album inside and out. But instead, it played things too safe. And that is why I believe Chromakopia is not as highly acclaimed as it could have been. This album has an identity crisis, and unfortunately, it suffered as a result. It's definitely a great album. That's a big point in this video, but it could have been even more had it committed to being something new. This is you, yes, literally you right now, commenting your thoughts on Chromakopia and this video in the comments. Seriously, let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. I am Lufa.